If you're watching this video, you're probably in the process of, or you're looking into installing SolidWorks. There's a few key points that you should know before you get started. The first, of course, is you need a Windows operating system. So Windows XP, Vista, or Windows 7. If possible, I would go with Windows 7. It generally works the best and is the most customizable. Windows Vista, I've never had any luck with SolidWorks, and I would completely avoid if possible. And if you're running Windows XP, you should be fine for the most part. Once you have all that figured out, you want to shut off any extra programs that you have running, anything that might conflict with the install. Specifically, you want to turn off virus software, as this can conflict with the installation process of SolidWorks. Once you're ready to install, you're going to want to know if you are running a 32-bit operating system or a 64-bit operating system. If you don't know this information, you can do a quick check within the control panel. Just come into System and look at System Type, and this will tell you if it's 32-bit or 64-bit. From there, you're either installing off of a DVD or a direct download. If you're installing off the DVD, one recommendation is to open up the files and then drag those files into a folder on the desktop. Not only does this make the installation run faster as you're running the files off the hard drive, but this tends to be more reliable. So you tend to have less failures in the installation process when installing from the desktop or installing from the hard drive, as opposed to installing from the disk. If you're installing from a download that you got from the SolidWorks website, typically this folder is in the Documents and SolidWorks Downloads. So if you just went with the default, this is where it should be. From there, you can navigate into the folder that you want to install. In this case, I'm going to choose 2012 x64 SP0. And then I'm going to go ahead and come into the SLDIM folder and click on SLDIM. And this is the same as if you're in the DVD and clicking on Setup. It's the same file. Once you're within the installation manager, you're going to choose which kind of installation you're doing. Typically, it's going to be an individual installation. If you're using a network license, you'll choose Server Products. And if there's one admin image set up for all of your installs, then you'll be choosing Administrative Image. And the download only options for if you're downloading updates or downloading the entire software from the installation manager. From here, you'll want to enter the serial number, and then if you have separate serial numbers for simulation, workgroup PDM, motion, or flow simulation, you'll want to add those as well. You'll also want to note that on some licenses, if you bought SolidWorks Premium as well as simulation together, then that's all going to be on one serial number. And there are some cases where the two were bought separately, so you have two different serial numbers. Once you go forward from entering in this serial number, SolidWorks will check that serial number with its server, and you may get an alert that there's a later release available. In this case, there's SolidWorks 2012 SP 2.0, and you'll now have the option of installing the version that you had available, or you can download the newer files. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and go with SP0, but otherwise this will download generally between a 200 megabyte and a 500 megabyte file from those service pack updates. Also, if you have earlier versions of SolidWorks, in this case I have 2011 and 2010, it'll ask you if you want to upgrade that release, which will remove out 2011 and replace it with 2012, or you can create a new installation. The difference being that in this case I can use 2010, 2011 as well as 2012. If we upgrade, then you can no longer use 2011 or 2010. And within the download options, you can change this if you're downloading an update or you need to download more files. You can also change whether or not to use the background downloader. And I typically recommend turning this off. Otherwise, whenever a service pack is released for SolidWorks, it's going to download in the background without asking you whether or not you want to download that file. And that can be an issue if you have quite a few users of SolidWorks that are taking up bandwidth downloading a file they don't know is being downloaded. So it's better to just turn that one off. And typically I'll leave the installation location alone. You could change this file if you want. And we can also come in and change what's being installed. So if you want to remove out certain components, for example, if I didn't want to install simulation, I could remove this out. And once you're done with that, you can go back to the summary. Lastly, you have the toolbox folder if you have the toolbox as an option. So if you have SolidWorks Professional or higher, or you've purchased the toolbox separately, then you'll have this installation option. And once again, you can upgrade an old toolbox as well, or use an existing. I'm going to go ahead and change this from SolidWorks Data 5, as there are a few other folders in there, to SolidWorks 2012. And that'll help me better keep track of which toolbox is which, especially if I'm using quite a few different versions of SolidWorks. Now that this is all set up, I'm going to go ahead and install. So this will generally take about an hour, depending on your computer as well as the hard drive you're using. So I'll go ahead and pause this out, and then we will take a look when this is pretty much fully installed. So we went ahead and skipped ahead to the end of the installation process. Mine took about 30 minutes. If you're using a solid state drive, that would be significantly faster. And if you have a 7200 RPM hard drive, it should be somewhere in that range between 30 minutes and an hour. So you should see this screen that says installation is complete when you're done. Typically I'll turn off the show me what's new, as well as the survey, as well as saying no thank you to the customer experience improvement program. And if you do see the screen, you're done, you go to finish, and you can open up SolidWorks. What does tend to happen from time to time is the installation can fail at some point, and then you'll get some sort of error message. And typically the error message will be fairly unintelligible, something like a 1404 error or something with just some sort of number designation without any explanation. The first thing you'll want to do is that if that happens is restart your computer and actually try the installation again. And I've seen quite a few times where the installation failed on the first attempt but went through perfectly fine on the second attempt. So the first thing you'll do is try to install SolidWorks again after restarting. Also, like I had said earlier, if you're installing from a DVD and it fails, you'll typically want to drag the files onto your hard drive and see if that fixes the problem. If the installation fails multiple times, then the issues are generally more complex. Sometimes you have to reinstall a component that SolidWorks needs within Windows to be able to install. And sometimes you have to uninstall various programs or move a few things around in order to get it to work. If you are experiencing additional problems with your installation, and you're on subscription, you can contact your reseller and they'll generally help you out with fixing your installation problems. Otherwise, typically if you go to forum.solidworks.com, if you're not on subscription, people will typically help you out with the problem or can generally give you advice on fixing whatever issue that you're having with said installation. And like I said, once you have SolidWorks installed, we can go ahead and click Finish, and then open up SolidWorks and start building models.